what is a virtual hospital and my COVID update. So, hi, my name's Gayle. Welcome to my Vivacious channel. This is my COVID update from where I was diagnosed with coronavirus back on the 9th of December. I have the Omicron variant and not the Delta variant because all of my symptoms, they say, line up with Omicron, which normally apparently is not as bad, but you can see I'm still on oxygen and I still get kind of breathless, but my O2 sats are a little better at night. They're still dropping, but I'm hoping to come off of the oxygen at some point soon. The occupational therapist, she was like, "You're not ready yet," and that's upsetting. But overall, I think I'm doing better because my O2 sats aren't dropping as much, which is really good. So that's my COVID update, and several people have asked about that as an actual COVID patient, like, excuse me, what to expect and so forth. So I hope that's helpful. Now let's get on to what a virtual hospital is and how does a virtual hospital work, and is it the same as a regular hospital, and let's see, do I think that the virtual hospital is effective and so forth. So when I was first diagnosed at the walk-in clinic, they put me under the virtual hospital care because they said with the way my lungs were doing and the way I was responding at that time, they wanted to have somebody kind of keeping tabs on me. So I wasn't sick enough to be in like the regular hospital, but I wasn't exactly well enough to kind of be on my own. So with the virtual hospital, what happens is there's a nurse that calls daily, and when she calls, she always asks about like what my temperature was, my pulse, and so on. And so I have this sheet that we would write everything down on so that when she called, I would have the information to give her. Sorry about that. So it would be the date in this column and then the time. And I wasn't really good about logging my temperature like I should have. Pulse, oxygen saturation, and then what I did for that hour, like if I took the breathing exercises and so forth, and any notes over here, my blood sugar, blood pressure, things like if I was coughing and things like that. So you can see that like back in December, I was getting some pulse ox numbers during the day of ranging from 90 to, I got 98, and that was always on oxygen. Now the numbers are still like 92, 98. Sometimes that's not on oxygen, so that's an improvement. But anyway, virtual hospital would call wanting all of this information, and they would make recommendations based on what I was telling him and how I sounded on the phone. And they would say, make sure that, for example, protein is a big deal with COVID, and they would make sure if I was taking the protein shakes for the day that they had wanted me to take. They didn't give me an amount, they just told me to get them and take them. And so they wanted to know like how many boxes, were there any new medicines, and sometimes there was. I'll get to that in a second. So they just wanted to know all of this information. What were my sats during the day? What were they at night? Was I getting up? Was I drinking? And they really pushed me to have Gatorade and soups and things like that, which is what I wanted anyway. They also told me about the importance of taking vitamins, and they wanted to know like what dose, and had me add extra vitamin C. Even though I was already taking it, they didn't feel like I was taking enough. So I had to do that. When I started, I did okay for a couple of days. And then when I started to go downhill some, she was like, whoa, I can hear this. Because I had the same person calling me, which was nice except for her days off. And so she's like, I can hear that you're not doing as well. And she wanted to know like how often I had taken my inhaler, what my stats were, my temperature, and everything. And then she was like, okay, I was hurting a lot, like under the rib cage and stuff. And she's like, okay, I really think that you need to go on into the emergency department and get checked. And I was like, oh, I don't think so. And she was like, well, ultimately it was my decision, but she gave me parameters on what to look for and what I should do. So it turns out I did have to go into the emergency department, and that's when I left on oxygen. So after I went on oxygen, they called the next day, of course, and I told them. So they went over with me, the virtual hospital staff, about like if I'm getting too little oxygen and I had a headache or I was weak, what to do. And they were always available for me to call and if I had a problem. And except after I think it was 6, I would have to call the emergency department and tell them I was under virtual hospital and talk to them. But they gave me the parameters, told me what to watch for, told me that like when my oxygen got to a certain point, I would need to call them, when my blood sugar was at a certain point, when I would need to call the doctor, and so forth. And so the benefit of virtual hospital was not just staying out of the hospital or minimizing my trips into the doctor, but having them navigate me through, like when the doctor also put me on a steroid dose pack, it always skyrockets my blood sugar. And I was like, whoa. And they were able to say, basically reassure me not to panic, and gave me some parameters excuse me, on when I should talk to the doctor about those numbers. So with virtual hospital, it was really just contact every day, telling him like what I had eaten and things like that. So I hope that answers your questions on what a virtual hospital is. If not, drop them down in the comments and I'll get it. So it's one of those things, it's almost like telehealth in a sense, except oftentimes with telehealth you have the option of doing it over a computer. But here in this rural area, some people have so little internet access that they do call on the telephone daily. I just wanted to make that point before I forgot it, because not everybody has great internet. So that's what to expect if your doctor should put you under virtual hospital. So thanks for watching. Again, leave me a comment if you got any other questions, and I'll see you on the next video update. Bye.